Every scary list you have ever scrolled past has the same quiet little problem. The chemicals people scream about the loudest, the ones with names nobody can even say out loud. Almost none of them ever killed a single person. But one of them did. Out of this whole story, exactly one thing earned the word deadly, and it has the harm to back it up. Here is the strange part. It happens to be the one that already got taken off American shelves, the one that slipped out the door without much of a fuss. Most people forgot there was ever a fight over it at all. And through one small rounding trick, printed right there on the back of the bag, a little of it can still end up in tonight's snack. I am going to give you its name, show you exactly how it hides, and then I will sort these famous villains out for you. The real one on one side, and the ones only wearing a costume on the other. My name is Wendell, and I spent a whole working life on the making side of the American food business. I am not going to name the companies, and it is not only to be polite. What I am about to walk you through was never one rotten factory off somewhere. It was simply the plain, everyday way the whole business ran, from the top office all the way down to the loading dock. When a thing is proven, you will hear me call it proven. When it is only a worry dressed up to look like a fact, I will tell you that too, because that one habit is about the only thing here worth your time. Then there are the lists, and you already know the ones I mean. Banned in Europe, poisoning your grandkids, a row of scary names as long as your arm. A lot of it is stretched, and a good piece of it is simply wrong, and I will show you that before we are done. Under all that noise, though, sits a real story, and it is a better one than the fake. There is an honest killer back in the history of the snack aisle. Riding right beside it are three fakes that got swept up in the same net, and there is one simple test that pulls them apart. Let me set it out for you in order. The name you are after is artificial trans fat. Down on the label it hides behind three words, partially hydrogenated oil, which is really just a plain liquid oil that somebody forced to turn solid. Sometimes it is only the word hydrogenated with a little something added onto the end. Here is the whole thing in plain kitchen terms. You start with a regular liquid oil, the everyday kind squeezed out of soybeans or cottonseed or corn. Then you bubble hydrogen gas up through it, and that oil turns solid and spreadable, and it will sit on a shelf for months without going bad. For most of the last 100 years, a factory looked at that and saw a small miracle. It was cheap, it stayed the same, it fried well, and it held its shape inside a cookie. The trouble is, what that little step leaves behind, which is a kind of fat your body was simply never built to deal with. And here is what sets it apart from every other name on those lists. It does not just sit there quietly in your food, it goes to work on you. It pushes up the bad cholesterol, the kind that clogs an artery, and at the very same time, it pulls down the good kind, the kind that helps keep an artery clear. Two things at once, both of them the wrong way, both aimed straight at your heart. That is not a rat study, and it is not a maybe. It is settled, measured in real living people, about as close to proven as food science ever gets. So how much harm are we talking about? The health researchers who track this around the world put the count as high as 500,000 deaths every year. All of it heart disease tied back to this one kind of fat. Closer to home, the estimate went that taking it out of the food supply could stop as many as 20,000 heart attacks and up to 7,000 deaths from heart disease a year, and that is in this one country alone. Now hear those numbers for exactly what they are, and nothing more. They are careful guesses of harm stopped, not a body count somebody added up at the morgue. Still, even read as carefully as you like. They are huge, they are real, and nothing else in this whole video comes anywhere close to them. So if this stuff is that dangerous, why am I telling you it might still be in tonight's snack? Did they not already ban it? They did, for the most part. By around 2018, you could no longer add it to food made in this country, and most of the aisle had been cleaned out years before that. Canada shut the door on it. Over in Europe, they cut it down to a tiny trace. That is all good news, every bit of it. But here is the catch, and it comes down to one small rounding trick that quietly does a lot of work. The rule on that big nutrition facts box lets a company round down. If one serving has less than half a gram of this fat, the box is allowed to print a clean 0. 0 grams trans fat, right there in big letters. on a product that still lists partially hydrogenated oil 3 lines down in the ingredients. Both of those are legal. Both of them are on the very same package. And half a gram in one serving sounds like nothing at all, right up until you eat 3 servings, which is most of one normal handful, and you keep doing that a few times a week for 20 years. So the big friendly box up top rounds things in the company's favor. That little list of ingredients underneath it does not. The list has to name that oil, spelled right out, every single time. And that is the whole reason I keep pointing people down to the small print instead of up to the happy 0. Where did it used to hide? The old spots were microwave popcorn, stick margarine, frozen pizza, that refrigerated biscuit dough in the tube, the coffee creamer, and the boxed baked goods with a shelf life you would measure in seasons. Most of that got a new recipe. But older boxes still sit on shelves, big tubs of frying oil still sit in some kitchens, and that rounding trick is still on the books. So a quick look never hurts. Now let me turn this the other way, because my honest job here was never only to scare you. The job is to give you the truth in both directions. Some of these got pulled that were never killing anybody, and if I let you walk away still believing they were, then I am no better than the people out there selling you fear. Start with a bright red dye you have been eating your whole life. Red number 3. You will find it in some candy, in some frosting, in the cherry red things, and even in a few cough syrups. It got pulled out of the American food supply. It has to be fully gone by 2027, and the way the headlines told it, you would think people had just escaped a poisoning. Here is the honest science instead. Fed to male rats, in doses you can barely picture, over a whole lifetime, that dye brought on tumors in the thyroid. That is a real result. But the way that tumor even happens turns on a quirk of rat biology that simply does not happen in a person. And the very people who ordered the color off the shelves came right out and said so, plain and clear, that there is no proof it gives a person cancer. An old rule on the books left them no room the moment that rat tumor showed up. Any color that brings on cancer in any animal, at any dose at all, has to go, whether it ever touches a human or not. So out it went, on the rule, not on a real body. And watch how the other side of this gets stretched too. Yes, Europe cut that dye back to pretty much cocktail cherries, and that was back in the 1990s. But Japan still allows it in food right now, today. So that neat little line, banned everywhere but here, was never really true. Being careful in one country, a rule on paper in the next, and business as usual in a third. Next one down that same road, Brominated vegetable oil, or BVO for short. Its whole job was keeping the citrus flavor from floating up to the top of a fruit soda or a sports drink. It is vegetable oil with bromine locked onto it, and that makes it heavy enough to hold the flavor mixed evenly all through the bottle. This one also got pulled from American food a couple of years back, and the honest label on it is suspected, not proven. Feed it to rats, and their thyroids take a hit, and bromine starts building up in the body. That is a real warning sign, and it shows up at doses close enough to normal eating to take it seriously. The one time it clearly hurt a person, and I mean one written-up case, was a man drinking 2 to 4 liters of a bromine-heavy soda every single day for weeks on end until he could barely walk. Once he stopped, it went away. There is no pile of bodies here. There is a warning from the animals, and one strange story about a man drinking a swimming pool of the stuff. Overseas, Britain shut it out back in 1970, and Europe by 2008. Here is the quiet part those scary videos always leave out. The big drink makers had already walked away from it on their own, years ago, long before any rule made them. By the time it was officially pulled, you had to go hunting to find it in an American drink at all. And here is my favorite one because it snaps the whole neat story clean in half. Back in the fat-free craze, somebody built a fake fat. They made the little piece of it so big that your gut cannot break it down, so it just slides right through you carrying 0 calories. They called it Olestra. It went into fat-free chips, you might remember, the ones that promised you all the crunch and none of the guilt. Now, people love to say Olestra was banned in Europe and Canada. Here is the honest fix, and it really does matter. It was never banned over there. It just never got approved in the first place. Those countries use an approved list system, so if a thing never makes the list, it never gets in. Never being let in is a whole different thing from being thrown out. And that difference is exactly the kind of thing that gets quietly blurred to make a scarier headline. Did it do anything? It did, and it was real, but nobody ever died from it. Because that fake fat slid right through without being broken down, it could bring on cramps and a sudden urgent run to the bathroom. It also pulled a few vitamins out along with it, so the makers had to add those vitamins right back into the product. A little stomach trouble and a vitamin fix. That is the whole list of charges against it. They put a warning label on it back in the 90s, and then they took that warning back off a few years later. Once the trouble turned out milder than everyone had feared, and the market finished the job on its own. The chips slowly died out, and you really cannot buy the stuff today at all. A story to learn from, sure, but a killer it never was. Step back and look at all four of them lined up together, because the shape of it is the real lesson. One of them, the trans fat, was a true killer, proven in living people, and it got dealt with. The other three got pulled, or kept out, on being careful, or on some old rule, or on an animal study that never once showed up in a human. Yet the same one word gets stamped on all four of them, which is banned. And that one flat word hides a mountain of difference underneath it. A proven danger and a careful maybe end up looking the same in a headline. They are not the same at all. There is a reason the two sides land in different places, and I walked you all the way through it once before, so tonight you just get the short version. Over there, a thing has to prove it is safe before it is ever allowed in. Here, it gets allowed in, and it stays until somebody proves it is a problem. Two honest ways of thinking, both reading the very same evidence, both coming out in two different places. Nobody over here is poisoning anybody on purpose. So where should a person really spend their worry instead? Not on a speck of dye in a cookie, I will tell you that. If you want the things that truly move your health, they are bigger and they are boring. And boring is exactly why nobody makes a scary video about them. Start with salt. Most of yours is not coming from the shaker in your hand, it is built right into the packaged food and the restaurant food. And the average person goes way past the line without knowing it. Then there is added sugar. The typical American runs at close to triple the amount anybody recommends, day after day after day. And ultra-processed food all taken together, which by now is more than half of everything this country eats by the calorie. Those three, quietly, do more harm than every banned additive on every list ever stacked into one pile. Last time I pointed you toward the cured meats. This time, look a little higher up the shelf. So there are your four, side by side and honest. One of them earned every hard word anybody ever threw at it. The other three got handed a bad name they never really earned. And there is one simple habit I want you to keep from here on, which is to stop at every scary claim and ask the one question that matters. Is this a proven harm, or is it only a careful maybe? Once you can tell those two apart on your own, no list on the internet can shake you again. If you feel like leaving me something down below, tell me this one thing. Which of the four caught you off guard? The killer you had half forgotten was ever a fight, or one of the three you were dead sure was poison? Send it my way. The next one I have been meaning to get to is the sneakiest little trick on the whole label. Two soft words, natural flavor, and those two words can legally stand in for a secret mix of dozens of ingredients that nobody has to name for you. How that is allowed, and what tends to be hiding back there behind those two words, is a story well worth your time. Do not lose a wink of sleep over any of this. Just shop a little wiser than you did yesterday. Read the small line on the day it matters, and let those loud lists go shout at somebody else. That right there is plenty. It is more than most people ever bother to do.